begin right here in Washington, where a deal on raising the debt ceiling faces its first major test. The bill was hammered out over the weekend by the White House and the House Speaker McCarthy. Members of the House Rules Committee now must decide if it moves to the full vote by all members. But there is opposition to this. Sean Caleb's, of course, has been following this closely for the past week or so, and I'm a little surprised by the opposition, but I guess, as the kids say in my car, are we closer, and are we there yet?
Well, you know, I think that we're getting there. I'm not really surprised. I really think that anybody who thought this was going to slide on through, a little tough. It's clear it's going to take some fighting, and the debt ceiling is not going to easily coast to the U.S. House of Representatives. A faction of extreme conservative members, some serving on the all-important House Rules Committee, have already come out with strong opposition to this 99-page measure. Now, the House Rules Committee is important. It met earlier today. Now, these are the members who will decide if the agreement's going to make it to the floor for a full House vote. Members of the so-called Freedom Caucus, the ultra-conservative members, they are simply blasting GOP House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, alleging he has caved in to the whims of the Democratic President Joe Biden. Now, one representative is urging other Republicans to step up and fight the measure to raise the debt ceiling, calling this, in his words, a career-defining moment for every Republican. Also, the GOP members are vowing to pull out all the stops and kill the bill. Now, this group of about 20 ultra-conservative lawmakers are demanding McCarthy pull the bill from proposal. The measure, which won support of both Biden and McCarthy, would raise the debt ceiling for 2 years, and perhaps even more important to the GOP, cap government spending for the next couple of years. But that simply isn't enough for the hardcore conservatives.
At the end of the day, the only person that would default in this town is Joe Biden, unless Republicans default on the American dream by voting for this bad bill. That is why this group will oppose it. We will continue to fight it today, tomorrow, and no matter what happens, there's going to be a reckoning about what just occurred unless we stop this bill by tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll get back to that word reckoning in just a minute. Now, despite the muling by some Republicans, the GOP did win a number of concessions from the Democrats. Aside from limiting domestic spending for 2 years, it will also add work requirements for many people receiving food stamps. It will also slash some $20 billion that the Biden administration fought for to beef up the IRS. And it will fast-track a controversial measure to construct a new gas pipeline from West Virginia to Virginia. Some Republicans are so upset by the measure, they are vowing to oust McCarthy as House Speaker, perhaps the reckoning. Now, it took more than 15 votes to elevate McCarthy to that post of Speaker back in January, and he really holds a very tenuous grip in power. Still, Phil, McCarthy says he's not concerned at this point and expects the debt ceiling measure to face a full vote in the House on Wednesday.
So this is Washington, where everyone's always mad about something.
Yeah.
We have this deadline. Apparently, it's the 1st or the 5th. You can help me maybe with that. And in terms of this deal being done, my understanding is that there is a procedural vote to take place. Then it would go to a vote on the full floor of the House, then the Senate, and then the president signs, right? So is there enough time to get all this done by the deadline?
Yeah, exactly. That deadline that you're talking about, Phil, June 5th, and there absolutely is enough time. In fact, the McCarthy and other House members, Democrats and Republicans, expect it to come to a vote sometime Wednesday evening. And secondly, already some powerful Democrats, including Republican Mitch McConnell in this U.S. Senate, have come out and said, this bill's okay. I'm going to give it the A-OK. However, Lindsey Graham and others are saying not so quick, but they're going to get it done. You have to have that feeling.
Yeah, we're going to stay optimistic. Sean, as always, appreciate you. Staying in the U.S., March home prices rose 0.7% versus last year, according to a key national home price index. It shows that the ongoing recovery in the sector is continuing. In fact, it's the second month in a row that prices went up. Now, February's jump snapped 7 months of decline. Experts warn, though, that 2 months of increases does not necessarily mean a recovery, but it could mean a decline is coming to an end. Still, the challenges include current mortgage rates being high, potentially interest rate hikes could affect home prices for many more months to come. And with all that, the markets had the day off yesterday on Monday, and so Tuesday they were back at it for the start of the week. John Terrett has this from the NYSE.
In New York, Tuesday was the first day of a shortened trading week because the markets were off for Memorial Day on Monday. And what dominated on Tuesday was nothing really here at the New York Stock Exchange, but over at the NASDAQ in Times Square. NVIDIA, the chip maker, which last week gave us a jaw-dropping set of earnings and predictions about its future earnings, with sales ahead by 50%. So on Tuesday, the news was that NVIDIA became a $1 trillion company, joining the exalted ranks of Amazon and Microsoft and Apple and Alphabet. The shares ending the day up 3%, but they're up about 187, 188, something like that, percent for the year as a whole. On the markets, well, at the time of the closing of the trading session on Tuesday, the Rules Committee was looking at this debt ceiling deal that they did over the weekend in Washington, D.C. So the markets closed with that in mind, just the news that the meeting was going on. So the Dow was down 1/15 of 1%, 50 points, to stand at 33,000 almost exactly. It had been down 200 earlier in the day. NASDAQ was buoyed by NVIDIA. It's up 7% for the month of May and 1/3 of 1% on Tuesday's session. S&P 500 also in the green, but only just, to stand at 42,005, with 3 out of 11 sectors in the green. Bitcoin had a good Tuesday, up a little bit, 27,800. On Wednesday in New York, we will get earnings from Salesforce, which is a Dow component, Chewy, which is a pet website, Nordstrom's, which is a family company. Even today, it was formed in 1901. All these years later, the family are still involved. And we get the JOLTS report at 14 hours GMT on Wednesday, and that will tell us how many jobs remain open in the United States. Despite all the layoffs that you hear about, there are millions of them open. Last time, it was approaching 11 million. So we'll see later on Wednesday. John Terrence, CGTN, on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
For more on the debt ceiling and the U.S. economy, William Lee, Chief Economist at the Milken Institute. Good to see you. William, you know, in normal times we talk about how strong, I guess, the economy is or isn't. In this case, let's start with the debt issue talks. You heard from Sean earlier about some of the progress that was being made. Apparently there could be a deal, I guess, later on today or tomorrow. Time, though, is running out. Here's what I don't understand. So both sides are saying that the deal's not strong enough, which leads me to believe that it's a good deal because nobody gets everything. But what I don't understand is the Republicans did want a freeze on spending. They may not have gotten as much as they wanted on some of the discretionary spending issues, but it's hard to find something wrong with this deal if you're a fiscal conservative. They got up most of what they wanted, did they not?
No, they didn't, Phil. And here's why President Biden did such a brilliant job of boxing these guys in. When the Republicans elected McCarthy, they said, we want to set fiscal policy on a sustainable course so that the debt increases will be manageable and sustainable for the long haul. And in order to do that, they really have to address medical spending and Social Security. But President Biden said, are you going to balance the budget on the backs of the elderly and the poor and the sick? No, right? So that's off the table, right? And everyone said, right. And so that's meant that Republicans could only manage the discretionary part of the budget, which is really a very small sliver of the things that.
I know, but William, it's not fair. We've got a couple days to negotiate this. Traditionally, raising a debt ceiling was not a negotiation on the fiscal budget deficit, which is where we are kind of today. Don't you think it's unfair? And I'm not backing either party on this, but don't you think it's unfair to hold the budget hostage over, yes, some things you may or may not agree with, but the debt ceiling, we all agree, has to be raised. We've already committed to it.
But Phil, this is U.S. politics. No party ever wants to change the debt ceiling legislation so that this is not a problem anymore. Every party knows it's going to be in a minority at some point, and the minority party has only one piece of leverage, which is the debt ceiling. In order to pass its agenda and to get more speed on the items for its agenda, they need the debt ceiling bickering in order to get their points across. And right now, it's the Republicans' turn. Next time, when the Democrats are in a minority, they're going to be doing the same thing.
But there is no next time. We've got this time to get this deal done. You had rating agencies already saying, look, if you don't get a deal done now, we're going to downgrade. I mean, you don't hold the U.S. economy hostage because you believe we should spend more or less on national health care.
Phil, that's U.S. politics. And in fact, S&P called their bluff in 2011, said, you know, the deal you just put together, that's a lot of BS because it does not keep the U.S. on a sustainable trajectory. We're lowering your AAA from AAA to AA. Fitch is now saying the same thing. Unless you have a plan that really puts the U.S. Fiscal position.
So what would you have liked to see in the bill then?
I want to see some effort to address the rise in medical care and some way of means testing the entitlement spending. And right now, entitlements cover a whole wide spectrum of benefits, and we're not even talking about that. It's not even on the top table for discussion.
And by the way, let me just pause you there. For our audience, because they may not be familiar with entitlement spending, you're happy to explain, but I'll do my best. But these are basically partially unemployment benefits related to Medicare benefits, and basically for those that maybe can't afford it, including, I guess, food stamps, correct?
Yes, in fact, the bulk of the boost to entitlement spending has come from medical care. So it's really Medicare, Medicaid, and other health-related issues.
Okay, but why does this have to be done right now? I mean, you're asking. I know what you want, but it's not realistic to get it done in a couple days.
Absolutely, and that's why the minority party always uses this tactic to put their items on the table in order to get negotiations underway. Without this leverage, the majority just runs them over, and it's never brought up.
Okay, but would you agree that this deal is likely to be pushed forward out of the Rules Committee and voted in the House and the Senate and signed? So that said, we can continue having this debate, but we got to move on. Is the economy going to be stronger after this deal gets done?
This deal will do zero to the economy because so little of fiscal spending is going to be affected that it won't do one thing or the other, pushing the economy stronger or weaker. What we now are worried about is that as the Fed has been raising interest rates, inflation has been so persistent that they're going to continue to raise rates even further. We see that even the real estate market, the home sales have bottomed out in January, and you see the Case-Shiller you just mentioned starting to turn around again. So the Fed is really up the creek in terms of asking the question, why is the economy still so strong? Well, it's because the unemployment rate is at 3.5%, and they're going to have to worry about stopping the economy from pushing inflation higher and higher.
I will agree with you on that one point, that I am worried that inflation might be rearing its head again, and I don't know where we go from here, but we're going to save this for another time. William, always good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.